We can now bring in Praveen Swami, contributing editor at ThePrint. Thank you very much for joining us on the program today. Do we have any idea who could be behind this attack?
Well, there have been a number of social media feeds on feeds linked broadly to the Lashkar-e-Taiba and to an offshoot of the Lashkar-e-Taiba called the Resistance Front. But that's very far from conclusive. There are a number of terrorist groups active in Kashmir, and it's very hard, I think, this early to conclusively decide who the perpetrators might be.
Because the Indian authorities for now haven't really said who they believe could be behind this attack. But one of the things the Indian Defense Minister said earlier today is that we won't just reach those who carried out the attack, we will also reach those who planned this from behind the scenes on our land. How far do you think India is willing to go?
Well, as you know, in 2019, following an attack in which 40 Indian Central Police personnel were killed, India unleashed air raids across the line of control. Prior to that, in 2016, there were land attacks across the line of control. India's strategic thinking was those prior attacks had established red lines beyond which Pakistan would not go, or elements in Pakistan's military thought to be sponsoring groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba would not go. Whether this will happen again, we don't know. Part of, I think, the considerations that will guide New Delhi's hand is what concrete evidence emerges on the perpetrators and whether they're linked to one of the groups operating from Pakistan or not.
Praveen, you mentioned this in the past. Indian security personnel were targets. Yesterday, it was civilians. It was tourists who were attacked. We know that the Indian government has been trying to promote Kashmir as a tourist destination. This terrorist incident Tuesday will have lasting consequences, won't it?
It's hard to say. Kashmir has seen tremendous violence in the past, including attacks on pilgrims, the kidnapping of tourists, and many massacres of local residents. But each time tourism has picked up again, there have been large numbers of people willing to go, believing that circumstances have become more peaceful. Large numbers of the very poorest Kashmiris who are not orchard owners, who have no other means to make a living, depend on the tourism trade. And I think they, along with a great many people, will be hoping that a sense of security comes back slowly and that tourists do return to Kashmir. It's worth remembering that violence has been in decline for quite some years now. And this incident is very much an exception from the norm.
Indeed, because we have seen since 2019, since Kashmir's semi-autonomous status was scrapped, we've seen stringent security measures imposed, so much so that journalists based in Kashmir have been too afraid to report and speak out freely. Did all those measures serve any purpose, given that we did see what we saw yesterday?
Well, I mean, journalists have been reporting from Kashmir. I think it's not that, the clampdown that was there after 2019 has proved to be a permanent state of affairs. But I think the bottom line is that many of the Indian government's claims to have permanently restored peace in Kashmir have proved to be excessive and ill-founded. But violence as a whole has been declining, not just since 2019, but for many years before that, ever since a peace process first began between India and Pakistan in 2003, which sadly proved short-lived. There's been a steady de-escalation of violence that's continued after 2019. Pakistan's army chief and others have been expressing some resentment in recent weeks about India not moving faster in resuming a dialogue with Kashmir. There've been elements in Pakistan's security establishment who believe India should make greater concessions. And the worry, of course, is that if this incident ends up sparking off another India-Pakistan crisis, all the work that went into developing a ceasefire on the line of control and improving the security situation will once again be subject to a crisis, perhaps even one that draws in the West and other countries beyond the region.
Praveen, because where are relations with Pakistan at this point in time, given that they're as low as they are, if for whatever reason India does find out that the mastermind behind whatever attack could potentially be in Pakistan, well, what happens then?
I don't think there's any doubt that at that point, if this turned out to be the case, and if it was proven that the Lashkar-e-Taiba is behind these attacks, I don't think there would be much option but for the Indian government to retaliate in some form or shape. That's been key to Indian strategy since 2016, and India has employed coercive means even before that, notably following an attack on the Indian Parliament, which led to a year-long standoff along the border in 2001, 2002. What form that retaliation would take, it's very difficult to say. As I said, India has used different means from time to time, and what the consequences would be are even harder to predict. Because in 2019, both countries ended up exchanging airstrikes on each other's territory. Given that both are nuclear weapons powers, of course, there would be very serious implications.
Praveen Swami, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today.